you think of animal trapping, what comes to mind? Survival for food, animal vacation, fur trade? As we know, animal trapping's main purpose was for survival. It was and is one of the oldest methods of hunting since prehistoric times. The first trappers in our country were Native Americans. Without the knowledge of being taught how to trap animals and different types of traps made to each passing generation, most of the population would have starved to death. With the knowledge of animal trapping being passed down and shared to each another, whether with fur trade and the drive to survive, we as a population have grown from that knowledge and was able to use animal trapping in the following ways to prevent damage to our lifestyle, damage to our personal properties, and being able to prevent the spread of animal disease with the transfer of goods and from other countries. First is to understand animal trapping and how the traps are made for the capture of different animals. Who were the first people to invent traps and why? Is animal trapping used today? If so, why? There are different types of traps that were made to capture different types of animals. As we all know, the basic understanding of animal trapping was to provide meat for food and clothing and fur for clothing. Let's fast forward from prehistoric times to the first animal trappers, the Native Americans, and how we still use animal trapping today. As we know in our country, Native Americans were the first trappers, and they were skilled at knowing the habitats of animals. Animals were captured for essentials such as nourishment and clothing. Bones were even used for arrows, fish hooks, and sewing needles. Nothing went to waste. The hunting and trapping of animals were a necessary activity of the Native Americans. They invented the original pit traps, snares, capture nets, and deadfalls. When explorers came to the North America, they discovered the plentiful fur resource the Native Americans had well established in their daily lives. They too wanted to profit from the resources and sought bigger animals for clothing. Clothing was both functional and fashionable. In the 1600s, Europeans invented a trap called footholds. The traps were not made for animals, but for humans. Europeans made the footholds to keep poachers out of their estate nicknamed man traps. Native American trappers tried to reduce suffering. Pits were dug, some lined with stones and covered with lattice work and brush. The baited deadfall involved logs or rocks that, when activated, fell and crushed the animal. Snares consisted of throat or body nooses constructed of plant-based cartilage suspended from branches along trails or cave entrances. Fish were netted or funneled through rock wire into baskets. These traditional methods are still capable. The demand of fur lasted until the mid-1800s. Eventually, the influx of settlers imperiled the Native Americans. By the 1800s, however, they realized that the Indians could not produce enough fur to satisfy the demand for fur in Europe and America. The trade in wild fur between Native Americans and the first European colonists was the single most important means of contract between these two widely dissimilar cultures, and the invention of many types of animal traps. From teaching of history and the use of animal trapping, our current generation still are actively using animal trapping, and may be considered controversial. Body gripping traps are a huge version of mouth traps, but at least they kill quickly. Snares involve rigid steel cables around necks or bodies. Glue traps might leave smaller animals, to struggle and die slowly. We have learned that nets, cages have less trauma on animals, for those who still think that animal trapping may be cruel. We have learned there are other types of traps that assist the welfare of the animals of survival and do not cause death. Today, trapping remains active. Various reasons include research, fish migration, controlling barnyard predators, even the capture of wildlife so we can view in local zoos. As each generation passed and learned from the use and the best materials to build better animal traps. So the next time you or your family visit the local farm, exotic pet store, zoo, or even see on social media of a live animal, not in the wild, all of this was done by using with animal trapping. Remember why you consume food. Remember how that animal was captured to feed you. Remember how you can view animals who belong in the wild and not someone's pet.